issues I found that a lot of them have is and then I want to speak on us too, because that's really what I but right. What I found is that a lot of women they're so stuck in the idea of a man providing from that generation. And I want to be clear in saying that before my wife, I didn't discriminate. So I didn't have an age. As long as they weren't young, it was okay in my mind. So when I was dealing with the woman that was older than me, it became obvious that I wasn't enough for her because I was a young whippersnapper. I may be able to keep up with her stamina, but I wasn't able to provide to her what she needed. So I realized that the relationship wouldn't work because it wasn't transactional for her. It wasn't, I didn't check all the boxes. So yeah, the mentality tracks. And the women of the like, you guys' generation is my mom. So listening to the, like, I grew up listening. I grew up listening. And it's just, and I get it. I understood why women became that way. I get it. Like, it honestly, a woman has more justification in my mind for being selfish than a man has for his lack of desire to be vulnerable. And the reason I say that is because, and when the podcast started, when the webinar started, Ken said that it's hard, and I agree, it is hard to transition yourself out of a mentality that you thought was right, a mentality that you thought was correct. But there comes the question: just because it's hard doesn't mean you don't work on it. And after he said, if the mind is not right, then you got a problem. And so when we connect those two dots and you say, well, it's hard, but and because it's hard, we got a problem, but who's accountable for that problem?
And that's why I follow that up with, some of us don't give up.
Correct. Yeah. And I was coming to it. I was gonna bring it forth. The ones that don't give up are the men that I watch. And when I watch those men, like, I have uncles, my mom has 5 brothers. And when I watch them date, and I have an older brother, and when I begin to watch them date, it becomes obvious that the ones that don't give up get the burnt end of the stick, because the women, when they try to date age appropriate, women that they're trying to date, it's transactional, and the men, like, we ready to heal. Like, what are y'all doing? Stop trying to take. I can't give you anything if my mind is not together. So, and if when I watch 2 people try to date, it always comes down to the psychology of it all. Who's going to say, I need to fix me? Who's going to say, this is a me problem and not a us problem? Even inside of relationships, me and my wife, we had to sit down and have what we called a relational responsibility conversation.
Come on.
Because we have to understand, who we have to understand how to be accountable to each other. And being accountable to each other requires you to know what the other person's tics is. Like, I think that women that are above me, my elder women, it's time for them to learn some patience and a little bit of reciprocity.
You better preach, young man.
Slow clap.
I mean, like I told David before, I've said this to you before. One of the things I admire about you is that you're way ahead of where I and a lot of other guys my age, where we were, because you've surrendered your ego. Like you can't have an ego. You can't have an ego and be at this place. But our thing was that it's ego, it's fear,
No, you know what it is, to be honest with you.
Stuff.
It's you, it's me, and it's every other Black man sitting here on this screen. None of us. So what you just said, and I appreciate that comment, and I want to give it back to you. I'm gonna pay that forward to you, because whether you know it or not, I'm learning from y'all. I learn from y'all. Though you and Ken, you guys are the ones that won't give up. Like, you're sitting here having a conversation. So I appreciate you guys continuing to grow and not being afraid to continue to grow.
See that.
Yeah.
But where I find the conversation needs to start is men helping each other to heal. We don't do that enough. There's not enough accountability amongst each other in the community. So you pointed out that I couldn't possibly have an ego to be this comfortable to speak facts. But what does that also mean? That for me came a lot of shame. And most of that shame came from who? Black men. Men are so uncomfortable when another man comes into a room and he's comfortable. And that's the conversation we need to be having, because men a lot of times, excuse my language, dick measure unnecessarily. And then it makes me ask questions like, are y'all gay? Like, and I know that's a little forward, but it's the truth. I come into a room and I'm just trying to be comfortable. And because that makes you uncomfortable, you feel a need to make me feel small. And I'm not the type of person you want to do that with. I won't allow it. I'm too comfortable with who I am. So I think if we want to talk about, that's why my podcast is called I Love You Black Man from a Black Man, because I think the conversation needs to start amongst us, truly having honest conversations about why we do stuff like that. Things like that. We don't ask the necessary questions amongst each other because we're so afraid of how we're going to look. It's the ego. And
it's also that there's a rule of thumb that you shouldn't be emotionally open to other men because they can use that against you.
And that is actually what they're using against you. When you choose not to be vulnerable, that is when they have leverage. When I figured out a secret is the worst thing to keep, because that is how people, when you begin to keep secrets, that's how people, blackmail you. And I ran the risk of getting blackmailed. Something that I wasn't actually afraid to tell the world. We have to stop being afraid. That's what it is. We're afraid. Men are literally scared to just be. And it makes it hard for men like me to just be, and it makes it hard for communities like the gay community to just exist, the LGBTQ community to just exist, because now I'm forced into that community because Black men won't deal with their stuff. And so it makes me want to attack them physically. So what I learned to do, instead of doing that, I love you, Black man, I'm a Black man. So let's just have the conversations instead of, I don't think this is a woman thing. I don't think it got nothing to do with women. And the cave of men is about men, not forcing each other to hold each other accountable to being an actual man. Who are you, bro? Who are you? Who are you?
What are you on?
Yeah.
Who are you, bro?
Yeah. Take off the mask. When I asked David and Andrew to send me a clip for the promo, and I messaged them separately, and both of their promo was about the exact same thing: vulnerability. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my God. And you all didn't even know that. Mm-hmm. So what you're talking about, David, is like allowing yourself to be vulnerable and speaking your truth.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to the whole conversation about marriage. I think that, the foundation of it, and I guess a lot of marriages, in my opinion, end up failing from the male perspective, just because a lot of times the expectations are off or misplaced. I think a lot of men do go into it with, the idea of like, well, there needs to be a level of reciprocity. And I used to believe that too. I think though, like, for me, I have to go back to a biblical perspective and foundation, being that the institution of marriage was first formed by God, right? And so, be that as it may, if we are basing marriage and the standard of marriage and how we are to pursue it, Scripture says, "Man, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself." So, if that is the standard, Christ served the church, and she didn't always reciprocate that love, that service. And so I think that oftentimes the issue is we go into it feeling as though whatever we give should be reciprocated. And the fact is, that's not a promise, that's a luxury. If we do get that, that's great, but that's a luxury, it's not a promise. And so when we have that expectation and that expectation is not met, then we get frustrated. So I think, first of all, we have to deal with that.
And so basically what he said is that men need to stop thinking that they God. Men need to understand that we need to, the question is asked all the time, who do a Black man vent to? You better be venting to God, my dude, or a deity, somebody, because where is your foundation coming from? You, bro? Clearly you're not doing it right. Look at your life. So all he just said, and that translates universally, not just in marriage. Like, you have to check yourself and say, well, where am I drawing my perspective? Who am I drawing my perspective from? Is learned behavior. Where did these learned behaviors come from? Go and dissect that. And when you figure it out, you will realize you need somebody else to turn to. And normally that's a daddy, but most Black dudes ain't got those. So where are you drawing your perspective if you don't got that dad? Like, that's what he's talking about. And to even make his point even more solid, that the scripture also says God, husband, wife. And like he said, it's not always reciprocated. That God has it designed that way, because if you go backwards, a child will not always show the mother the love that she deserves because she almost died giving birth. So the woman will not show the same amount of love to the husband. And then if you even want to go further, we don't show that same respect to God. So how do you expect complete love? Like, it is just, woo.
My God.
You want me to tell you what the Quran say too, because it says the exact same thing. Like, it is that deep. It is that deep. Men in the first place, men want to be God. God created a territory for men, for us who did not want to follow a deity, and it was literally hell. So I just wish men would understand that a deity is important. I don't believe in telling somebody that they need to practice this or that. I just believe that if you're not drawing your perspective from somewhere, if you don't believe that something is higher than you, then you doomed.
So I want to take it a little bit off of this path. Same topic, but a couple things. When we talk about God and we talk about marriage, we're talking about covenant. Number one thing that's missing with a lot of marriages is that they treat it as a contract versus a covenant.
Right.
When you have a covenant, I mean, contracts are made to be broken. There's loopholes and all this stuff. I mean, and of course, if someone gets into a marriage where they're being abused or something terrible is happening, then, you know, they take that up with God and they make a decision. If they need to leave, they need to leave, whatever. But in your normal everyday marriage where there's highs and lows, ups and downs, covenant is what carries you through those, because there's no, you got two different people who are coming together to try to make something work singularly, but they're still two different people growing at different paces, having their own life experiences. So you're not that whole idea, that honeymoon period that most people experience in the beginning of marriage, whether it's 6 months or a year or so, you know, that type of love is going to change. You got to know that before you go into it. So when it mutates and it changes, then you can't say, oh, well, we're not in love anymore, or whatever they might come up with. So the covenant, the agreement, the transaction that the three of you have made with God is the most important thing to keep in mind during those changes, during that life. And a lot of people lose sight of that. And I'm going to be transparent. My ex-wife, I feel like, I'm sure I had my things that I did wrong. So I own whatever that is. I just don't know what it is. Right. I just don't know what it is because communication didn't allow that from her side. But I respected the covenant. I felt like with that covenant, with that covering, we can work through anything. We're just going to have to find a means to do it. But you got people not looking at marriage as covenant. You got people who get hung up on, this is a big one, roles. Yeah. Roles. People get hung up on roles. It's like if we're both driving the car, if I don't have a right foot, but I got the hands to steer the car, and she got the right foot to pass the gas, it's like, all right, our goal is to get to this destination. Okay, so we're gonna drive together, we're gonna make this work. Well, no, you don't have your foot on the gas. I don't have a foot right now. I don't have a foot right now. Can we get to the destination? Can we do that? And people lose sight of we have a goal and a destination together. And it's not going to always be 50-50, no matter what Teddy Pendergrass said. It's just not going to be that all the time. But you got to know and understand that. And the core of that is always going to be that covenant. It's always going to be that person, that core person. Why did you marry that person in the first place?
Yes.
Because I love that person and love everything about that person. Everything around that person can change, even things with that person. If somebody gets illness or loses a job or she finds out she can't have a child, is that a reason suddenly I'm going to leave because she found out that she can't have a child? She didn't know that going in, so I think with a lot of women treat men in that transactional way. Oh, he lost his job. I got to get out of here. Well, he didn't plan on doing that.
Right.
Most men innately want to take care of our families. That's not a problem. That's kind of how most of us are built. But we also want a partnership. We want to know that there's a tag team in case something happens, that you don't mind stepping in and doing what you need to do to get us to that destination. Right. A lot of people don't understand. Again, all that is based on covenant. The covenant that Moses had with God, he didn't lay out this easy path for this dude with a stutter. It was like, things are going to keep changing. This is what I need you to do. The goal is to get your people out of Egypt, get them to the promised land. It ain't going to look like you think. I didn't tell you weren't going to make it until it was, and now, hey, listen, Moses, I need to tell you something, man. You're not getting there. You're not going there.
Oh, my God.
But he didn't stop. When he found that out, he's like, I quit. Covenant.
Yeah. Will, you were kind of talking about the difference between, the younger generation, versus y'all's. I think that oftentimes our generation, we seek the benefits more than the commitment or the covenant. And oftentimes I would say, especially in this day, it's not even a standard to get married anymore. Like, you can experience the benefits of marriage without even pursuing the commitment or putting the ring.
That kind of started with my Generation X. We were the first people to find that I lived with two women before I got married. Mm-hmm. I had, that, and it was fine. It was fine. Everybody was doing it,
Yeah.
I can see her question.
I'm sorry. I'm actually
okay. Can you read it, Will?
Sure. It said, April said, shouldn't it have been a meeting of the minds in the courtship before marrying? We men and women settle for things that we see as not for me. So I understand what you're saying. This is into compromise and what is a deal killer and what is not a deal killer. And when things are circumstantial, you might think like Andrew or I think Kennery said, yeah, nobody goes like, I'm gonna lose my job today. And a lot of times when economic circumstances change, that's when you really find out who you're married.
Absolutely. I just meant the superficial things though.
Right.
Yeah.
The superficial things that we look past, that we know that we're not feeling necessarily.
Red flags.
Basically, you know, the things that you know that you can't compromise and what you want in your marriage and or relationship. We do a lot of dumbing ourselves down. It's not a matter of still humbling yourself, but what kind of women are you approaching also? Because it's a meeting of the minds in terms of, are they on my level? We looking at different things. As a man, I know that it's more of a physical attraction off the bat for men than it is for women. That's just scientific. I'm just saying on a majority basis. Not talking for individuals. I'm saying on a more often than not.
That's scientific.
They out
You're
here
right.
getting ass wearing lashes. They're not doing it for each other. They're doing it for your attention.
Right.
That's all I'm at.
Because I don't know.
Here. So some
a man say,
somebody who doesn't, that like her she is 100% right. Like, so when somebody who don't identify as heterosexual and someone whose first instinct is not to I don't have natural sexual desires. But when I see something, my body responds because that is what it's trained, it's been conditioned to doing. So she's 100% correct in saying that the first thing that we look at is the physical. That is 100% true, and it is scientific as well, because they did an experiment where if you blindfold a man and if you put a mouth on him, his body is still going to respond because he's ignorant to what's touching him. He just knows how it feels, and so that is an actual fact. But what I will say about it being a meeting of the minds, that's something that can be avoided if we stop moving so fast.
The thing of it is, here's the funny thing. Here's another actual fact. No one sees somebody else's mind across the room.
Correct.
So, even women like to downplay the physical attraction sometimes, and assign it strictly as a man thing. But I've had female friends all my life. I generally get along better with women because a lot of brothers want to be knuckle draggers. I ain't got time for that. I don't have to, like you were saying earlier, I don't have to prove my man. Leave your woman in the room with, okay, never mind. But the point being that I don't have to prove, I've never felt a need to prove my manhood to another man. If you doubt me, let's go, or leave it alone. It doesn't matter to me. It's not important. But the physicality of who we see, we're attracted to what we're attracted to.
Correct.
We don't have. It's kind of it's an instinctual response, whether it's pheromones, whatever it happens to be. We like what we like.
Correct.
So that's going to be the first thing that we see, barring the fact that sometimes you can have, like I had a long distance relationship in the early 2000s. And I met this girl in a chat room. She's from England. She's a Jamaican girl from England. I had never seen her, but we vibed to the point where she came to the States to visit me. And we clicked then too. It just, long distance is hard to maintain, but you can become attracted to someone for their essence, for their being.
Correct.
Right.
That's the definition of my sexuality, demisexual. That has to be cultivated first. So I know that that's possible, but what I think the only reason why I answer her question in the affirmative is because we have to get to a point of having an honest conversation, and how we get there is by us, me, you, Will, Andrew, us realizing that we are anomalies. We are not we're not the popular breed. Our mentality is not the popular mentality. So when a woman responds to, when a woman asks a question like that, we have to, us as men, the ones that are unpopular, the unpopular mentalities, we have to make sure that we remember that, oh, she's speaking from her experience. She's speaking from her experience. Right. And so because she's speaking from her experience, you have to show, oh, I'm not that dude. That comes to work and us showing a woman that we really out for something other than the physical.
They got to believe it though when we show
correct them. And that ain't your job to
that's
make
that's
them
the problem
and trust them. But it's on them whether they want to believe it or not. But you will know hands down that you did your part. Shoot, that's why it's easy. It was always easy for me to enter and exit relationships. And I didn't feel like people said I move fast. No, I just have perspective. I understand that logic is more important sometimes than emotions. And logic said we couldn't fit. So I'm not emotional about it.
That's where I'm at now. And I think if you ask some of the women that I date, it can be a little frustrating for them. Because
that's their fault.
Nothing to prove. I'm basically, I always tell women straight up, I'm like, I'd say I have a lot of tact, but I say whatever I want.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to do whatever I want. And you with it or you're not. And you're a wonderful woman. I think you're amazing.
Right.
But and I've said this to women. There's somebody mad at me right now because I have not been responsive the last few weeks. And she's like, what's up? And I was like, I'm just not really I'm not really feeling this. And she, reviewed her application and broke down all her wonderful qualities. Like, hey, look at me. I have these degrees, a doctorate actually, and I make this. And once again, I look like this and I own this and I drive that and I don't have any children. My 100% focus is on, and I was just like, yeah, but that's great.
Just because you're a nice person don't mean you're nice for me.
Exactly.
Right. And she said, oh my God, I'm used to telling guys this. She's like, maybe you've been sent. She told me I was sent by the devil to get back at her.
Well, you know what? And we can, you can't make the final determination about things until you interact with people on a regular basis, but you can get a good idea. When you're not feeling somebody. If you really being honest with yourself, you know whether you're attracted to me or not in that way. That one fundamentally, that or not. So if you're trying to see where this is gonna go as a transactional situation, I don't want to do that.
So what I was trying to say when Will was expressing himself in terms of the woman that's upset with him right now, and she reviewed her resume and listed her credentials, my question to you is, how did you even get entangled with a woman who felt like this makes who she is? And that's what I mean. Like the kind of woman and or man that you choose to deal with, what do they hold to be valuable? You understand what I'm saying? I have degrees, but it's not nothing that I walk around on my shoulders and feel the need to tell somebody that I'm interested in intimately and trying to build a relationship. Those are things that, you discuss on the surface, but nothing that I feel like I have to pull up on roll call.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, April. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make sure I put it in proper context.
Yeah.
That you all understood what I mean. Kind of, we all have to be accountable, both men and women.
Exactly.
But I feel like the way that men are choosing women is superficial. I don't wear makeup. I don't wear lashes. I don't do all those things, but those are the kind of women that get the attention too. So let's not make it one-sided.
Well, see,
But look, you're asking me, and at the same time saying I have trouble expressing myself. I can't, because no one is asking you to cry in front of them. We're just saying, speak, talk, communicate.
okay, so listen. Here's what I'm going to add to that. One of the problems. The first thing was what type of women are you addressing? That use that kind of resume. Well, it depends on how you define yourself as a person. Male, female. If you define yourself by your job, by education, by whatever, then that's what they're going to read off of their resume as something that they think is important. And whatever, that's fine. I mean, I think I can speak for the guys on this panel. For us, that's not, I don't care. We don't really have that kind of mindset. But the other part of it is, and my favorite word, you might not know my favorite word. My favorite word is not accountability, but it is understanding how your response is your response. You can't blame someone else. You have to have ownership. Ownership is what I'm trying to say. Ownership is, your immediate response was, well, what are men doing? And the problem that occurs when men are trying to express ourselves is that very thing is we can't get how our lived experience are making us feel without there being a tit for tat.
That's true.
That requires ownership. If we're having a conversation about what women feel, men need to listen and take ownership for the things that we contribute to that issue. We require that same thing to happen when men are expressing our experience, our lived experience that you all can't know intimately because we're living them. And we're trying to say, hey, this is what we feel, this is what we've experienced. But then when it comes back as a retort, a tit for tat, that's when the communication starts falling apart.
And
so
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm done.
I think that April, you are also unpopular, and that is something that we really need more women to understand. They're not succumbing to the status quo. When women like you aren't fitting the social norm of what the standard of beauty is, we need you to understand that you are actually the unpopular. That's not to say that you aren't beautiful or that you're not seen or that a man is superficial for not seeing you because of that. For me, and I'm gonna just be 100% honest, I will be someone who you would call superficial. And it's not because I think that a woman is unattractive bare. It's because when a woman is bare like that, I love it, actually. It makes me, the first thing that comes to my mind is confidence. I love it. That checks the mark. But then where does that come into question? Where is it like, well, are you gonna put this on, arouse me? I love you and all, but that's where the idea that men are superficial come in at, because we do, sometimes we do desire, what they say, a lady in the streets, but a freak in the sheets. Like that's real. And then when it comes to women, what I've learned, because I don't have a degree, but I've always only attracted women who did have degrees. I've always only attracted women who looked better on paper than me. And to